Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Brits podcast, waiting for yet another West Coast game. We've got late start on Sunday against the Los Angeles Rams. Late in the sense of we don't know what the hell's going on either, but we hope that you stick with us as we talk all things Browns Rams and take a look as well at some of the Christmas wishes we've got. It's the 1st of December. Let's get a little festive here. You're listening to the Brits podcast with Josh, Owain, and Sean.
Boys, just the same old Browns. Garrett's going to get him, and he knocks the ball away. Caught by Donovan Peoples-Jones. Touchdown! He got it! He got Chubb. He's to the 30, 20, 10, 5. Touchdown! Wow, what a struggle. The way it should be, I guess. Brownies, here we go. Woo, woo. Here we go, Brownies.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Believe in Brits podcast. Here looking at the Browns' next game on Sunday, a 9:25 kick against the 5 and 6 Rams. With me tonight, we've got a full complement. Got Owain and Sean both in. Sean, lovely to see you again, pal. How are things?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good. A little bit chilly, but aren't we all? So yeah, can't complain, mate. Can't complain.
Absolutely. One thing which the Browns won't have to contend with this week is the weather. Yet we feel like we're going to have a few snow games on our Saturday forecast. Are you playing tomorrow? Have you got a snow game tomorrow? Or are you still recovering?
No, it's boiling in Wales, mate. It's like 35 degrees outside, so yeah, we'll be fine tomorrow. Mate. Sunscreen.
Yeah, 35 degrees Fahrenheit. More like, yeah. You're not a million miles away. The problem is that you say that we have quite a few American listeners, according to our Spotify Wrapped anyway. So you could say that, and you could panic a few people who think that there's a microclimate just over the England-Wales border. But no, great to be able to have a trio in today. I was going to do a whole thing about, what the alliance is going to look like, how that's going to impact things. The true case of the matter is it is currently 8:00 in the evening here in Britain on Friday night. We don't know who's playing quarterback. It looks like it's going to be Joe Flacco, and I can't believe I am saying those words. That Joe Flacco will quite probably be leading out the Cleveland Browns in a game of football. That just sounds alien to me. Myles Garrett hasn't trained. Denzel Ward hasn't trained. This was up to Thursday. I have no idea what's going on today. Anthony Walker still hasn't trained. There's a lot there. The Rams are coming off a 2-game winning streak. Beating Seattle at home and then Arizona on the road. Stafford's back. Owain, what do you make? I mean, I'm painting a pretty sorry picture here, but try and deliver me from it being a completely negative podcast, please.
Yeah, it's completely different to like what we would have built up this game to be all year. I think all three of us would have expected this to be a little bit of a cakewalk, even as close as a month ago, maybe. But the situations have changed on both sides, with obviously Stafford being back with the Rams and doing really well, where, going into the bye, they weren't quite sure what his health situation was. And then our health situation being what it is now, like you say, QB4 on the way in, 2 all-pro defenders potentially not playing. It's going to be a big test. It's going to be a big test of the Browns, when we sort of said, a couple of weeks ago that, if they could come out of this 2-game stretch of the West Coast with a 1-1 record, they'd be really happy. And, I think they'd be even happier considering everything that's sort of transpired since then.
Yeah, and like you say, 4th quarterback likely to be starting for the Cleveland Browns. Anyone want to tell me the last time that would have happened, if it does indeed happen on Sunday? Anyone want to shout out a year as a guess?
I know the last time the 4 QBs won in a single season was 2003, I think.
That wouldn't have been the Browns at the very least. I think. Oh, you might have been thinking. No, that's only 3 as well. 2008. Derek Anderson playing 9 games, Brady Quinn 3, Ken Dorsey 3, and Bruce Gradkowski got a game in as well. So that's how long ago it's been. I didn't think I'd have to go all that far back, considering the carousel that has been the Browns' starting quarterback position. But, and I'm continuing to look back further. The time before that would have been before the breakup of the original Cleveland Browns. So that would have been in 1988 when Bernie Kosar got injured. So we're talking relatively unprecedented times at quarterback. You've got, all pros, maybe even higher on a defensive side, looking towards, another game out. It's a lot. And then you got Matthew Stafford, like you say, improving on the other side. I guess there are shoots of optimism, though, Sean. When we look at last week, for example, we were talking obviously after that game and saying as to how DTR, if he'd have stayed in and didn't receive that hit, it looked like that we were turning things around there. And we started looking at the Joe Flacco situation even at that point. And if he can just get a full week in, a limited playbook, all the rest of it, at the end of the day, we're talking a 1-point win over Seattle, where they only scored 17 points, and a win against the Arizona Cardinals that everyone seems to be doing at the moment. There's no need to abandon ship at this point.
No, it's still a perfectly winnable game. I think the Browns' method of winning games is pretty set for the rest of the year, regardless of who plays quarterback. It's going to be heavily reliant on the defense continuing to play at the level that it has done for the vast majority of games and the vast majority of the season. And it needs to be an offense that doesn't beat itself. That was, again, part of the problem that we had last week when the game sort of almost got out of hand. It's because we sort of had plenty of plays that caused ourselves more harm. That's one thing in terms of Joe Flacco that he needs to be better at, in terms of that's just him in general. He's pretty much had a sort of 10, 12 interception seasons pretty regularly when he started 16 games, even in his heyday with the Ravens. He was always liable to throw interceptions. And that's obviously increased, or it's certainly sort of continued the trend, although his volume of games has dropped off. In terms of his ratio, it's still pretty similar when he's played at, Denver and New York in recent times. I think the other thing that we just need to be really mindful of is the fumbles that he sort of seemingly takes when he's sacked. I think the last time we saw him, he took 10 sacks last year for the Jets. He fumbled on 5 of those 10 sacks, which is a pretty bad indictment, really. It felt like PJ Walker was a walking fumble when he came into the ball game on Sunday. Just gone. We don't want the same situation with Joe Flacco. He's always obviously had the tendency to push the ball a little bit further down the field, which obviously has led some fans to be quite encouraged. But we've yet to really see the wide receivers show consistently that they're going to excel in that game. I think some people are probably trying to fool themselves a little bit that Joe Flacco is almost like the saviour, if you like, that he's now probably the best quarterback that the Browns have had play since Deshaun Watson's injury, and they're kind of dismissing the fact that DTR looked pretty good. I think expectation levels, from what I've read in general terms, seem pretty ridiculously high for Joe Flacco with the team for just over a week. Obviously being away in terms of the trip to LA, and it's a lot to ask. You said 2008, the last time 4 quarterbacks played. It just doesn't happen with any sort of regularity. So the fact that we're in this situation, we've said it a few times now, it's almost remarkable to consider the fact that this is a game that, whether we win or lose, and just to again put that on people's radar, whether we win or lose, we will still have around about a 70% chance to make the playoffs, regardless of the result. The fact that we're in such a good position is just a phenomenal achievement from everybody involved. So what I would say is, whatever happens this week will happen. I think it'll be determined really in terms of whether we make the playoffs or not with those home games that we've got left on the schedule. The Bears and the Jets, you've got to be targeting for wins in those two, which probably means you need one more win, probably. There's a bit of a log jam with teams around the sort of 5 and 6, 6 and 5, 500 mark. A few of those have got to play each other. Houston and Jacksonville are playing each other this week, for example. Or they've got certainly games coming up against each other. I think the Broncos have got to play the Texans, that type of thing. So, some of these teams are obviously going to be dropping games. So they need to take care of the business in the home games. But as we said 2 weeks ago, if they can get one of these road ones, it'll put them in an excellent position. So fingers crossed they can do the job on Sunday. Although, as you've rightly alluded to, plenty of obstacles in the way, which seems to be par for the course this season.
Yeah, sorry. I was looking whilst you were talking there. I was reading up a little bit on that 2008 season to see if there were anything that we could take out of it. So it was Romeo Crennel's last season. For anyone that is able to remember back quite that far, it was one of the first seasons that I really paid attention. And we ended up going 4-12 after a 10-6 season the year prior. So when you look at it from a blueprint perspective, there's been so much chaos with the Brown season. We talk about this week in, week out. There's so much chaos, but if there's one coach and if there's one team that I feel can manage the crisis, it's this one. Do I think that we're going to go in there and just set our mark? Absolutely not. Do I think that we'll still be in the conversation in the fourth quarter? Yeah, I think that we will. And it's probably by limiting them rather than setting a high score ourselves. But even I think that if it is Joe Flacco starting, I'm refreshing Twitter like mad to see as to whether or not we've actually got a definitive answer. One of my fantasy teams could really do with that answer, seeing as Joe Flacco is the only QB I have available that week. Yeah, that's how bad that one's got to. Yeah, I'm in the playoffs for that one, stupidly enough. Don't draft QBs that have the same week off. You're gonna say it's a week off, but when it comes to it, you really need that win. So he's still a multi Super Bowl winning quarterback. He's someone that you should be able to give him a playbook, a limited one at that, granted, and give him a week's worth of practice with the receivers around him, and he'll turn out better than PJ Walker looks. That's my. You're talking about expectation, Sean. That's kind of my expectation. My expectation is that he doesn't look like PJ Walker did in the final quarter of the game against Denver.
Yeah, look, low bar to get over, but completely agree. That's obviously why the move was made. I don't think it was any coincidence. And look, we're sort of dancing around the edges. I think we're all probably 99% sure it will be Joe Flacco, aren't we? Let's be honest. Yeah. And the fact that he was made QB2 early on in the week kind of gave us the answer that we were expecting anyway, that he's essentially being brought in to lower the floor of quarterback play, in my opinion. I think DTR's got the ceiling, or potentially at least has the ceiling, because you don't know what you've got there. The brief sort of, 3 quarters that we saw on Sunday were impressive, certainly a step in the right direction. You'd like to see him back on the field this season and see how far he can go. Flacco, in theory, like you say, going to manage the game better, you would have thought, than PJ Walker. You obviously don't want the Browns to go behind, but you kind of feel if they do go behind, they've still got a chance of getting back into the game with Joe Flacco being there. But I'm trying to temper this with the fact that, like I've just said, he hasn't played a game in a long time. Yeah. He's got no reps with any of these receivers in a live environment. He's got no experience in this scheme. I know he's played like in similar schemes, you could argue, but every scheme is slightly different, and the verbiage that people use and all of that kind of thing. So it's just a lot. It's just another lot to deal with, isn't it? And hopefully, I think the interesting thing, and probably throw this over to a wide and see what his opinion of it is, because I'm guessing it'll probably be similar to mine. But if Joe Flacco comes in on Sunday, plays well, the Browns win, and they win relatively handsomely, and then DTR clears concussion protocol next week, what do you do?
somehow, Owain, I think you're on mute.
Something that I was sort of thinking about as you were talking there was that question you just posed to me, and it'd be a really tough one, wouldn't it? Because like you said, the 3 quarters we saw from him last week were really encouraging. And you would hope that if that continues like to trend the way it is, that DTR would give us a better shot of going further than a Joe Flacco that couldn't even keep his job with the Jets last year. I think that's something a lot of people are forgetting as well. Like, we do have some recent evidence that Joe Flacco is not that good anymore. I think it's fair to say. Like, it wasn't as if they gave the job back to Zach Wilson last year. They gave the job to Mike White over Joe Flacco. So, I think people need to temper their expectations a little bit. But like you say, if they do go out and dominate tomorrow and have a comfortable victory, I think that would make it hard to go back to DTR in terms of the outside noise. That we heard all the outside noise when PJ Walker was winning us games. Like, the outside noise was, why on earth are you going to DTR when PJ Walker's 2-1? But in reality, we've all seen how they got to 2-1 in those games and realized that it was the right decision. But I think that becomes harder if they do win comfortably tomorrow, or Sunday even. I think
Don't worry, most people will be listening to this tomorrow.
I think it'll be an interesting one. I would always go back to DTR when he's healthy because, like you said, you just don't know what you have there. You could unearth a gem that would be really valuable for the franchise long term. And I would just rather ride with that than a half dead Joe Flacco, to be honest.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a good question that you pose as well. It was one of which was sort of buried in my notes as well. How does that look? I think that my answer is it depends on the QB play within it. If by total domination we win 15-0, that's not the same as going out there and putting like a 300 burger up in passing yards. And I guess it depends on a number of different tangibles as well. Such as ability to make X type of play and that sort of thing. I think that will be the sort. I don't think it'll be done purely on the numbers side of it, and also, I mean, personally, I think this will be a moot point. I think the DTR, if he's out today, I think he's out for a few weeks. Concussion protocols seem to go one way or another, don't they? They seem to either be a quick in and out, or you're gone for a couple of weeks or so. You usually don't see something in the middle. But to stick with your devil's advocate there, Sean, I think that we are currently in a position where you play the hot hand. So whoever's hand that is, all we know is it's not PJ Walker's, right? The only hand that isn't hot is PJ Walker's. So, it's going to be one or the other. And it might even come down to, they might end up making it about practice, like who looks better on Tuesday for the next game. Because it could come down to that.
I think we've just got into this sort of routine now, haven't we? And it's a shame that it's ended up the way that it has. But the Browns are such a week-to-week team on the offensive side of the ball now. It's just, who have you got? What can we do to beat this opposition that's in front of us? It's very difficult to say what the identity of the Cleveland Browns is on the offensive side of the ball this season. The running game went in week 2, or certainly went in terms of how you wanted it to look with Nick Chubb going down. We've had so many changes at the quarterback position, where you wanted Watson to come in. He's obviously, been in and out the lineup. You then, threw DTR into the Lions, which obviously was a bad decision. You've then had to stumble through PJ Walker back to DTR. Now you're starting your fourth quarter. But, to expect any sort of cohesion and regular rhythm with this offense is just, it's unrealistic. And even with the tackle play as well, that's the same. It's just, as I say, it's frightening really when you think about the amount of issues that they've already overcome. So, I think Myles Garrett, by all accounts, it seems he's going to play. I think how limited he's going to be is a different question. Just the fact that he's on the field doesn't necessarily mean anything. If he's out there with just one arm, I don't know how good he's going to actually be. But all the noise suggests that he will play. A little bit quieter in terms of Denzel. That's obviously a big one for this week in terms of the wide receivers that the Rams have got. But the key thing really for the Browns this week, and what they didn't do last week, probably for the first time in a long time, was they didn't dominate on the line of scrimmage. In terms of the defensive side of the ball for us, it was the first game. We commented on it on Monday, didn't we, mate? That it felt for the first time this season that we didn't get regular pressure. Outside of JOK, who played a blinder and was all over the field, nobody else really seemingly stood up on defense. Everybody sort of had a middling game at best. Nobody particularly sort of grabbed the bull by the horns and said, right, I'm going to make a difference here. I'm going to be the one to step up if Miles is hurt. They need to obviously sort of correct that because they've dominated the line of scrimmage most weeks. And this Rams team isn't great when it comes to the offensive line. Stafford's very good at getting the ball out quickly. Expect to see a lot of targets to Cup, a lot of targets to Puka Nakua, or Nakua, however you pronounce the guy's name. So I think it's potentially another big game in terms of JOK in that sort of linebacker spot. And hopefully Ward does play because that will mean Newsom going back inside. And whether it was just a case of he hadn't played outside for a long enough period and he just got exposed last week against Denver, who knows? He looked a beat slow last week, didn't he, Newsom? He really did. Looked slow. Something just didn't seem right last week with him.
And they targeted him. Wilson straight up targeted him.
And as you would, mate, with the way that he played, and hopefully, look, I'm not going to try and, completely rag on him. Everyone's entitled to a bad game every now and again. You hope they're limited and, fingers crossed that one's in the rearview mirror and he can bounce back. But obviously looks a lot different if Denzel is on the field. I think the defense should still have enough to cause the Rams issues. And as you said, that means it'll be tight going into the fourth quarter. And then it's just, can you be on the right side of the result?
Absolutely. I'm not going to insult either of yours' intelligence by asking you for a prediction for Sunday. I think there's just too much. There's just too much going on that would influence it one way or the other. So I won't behold you to a prediction there. Instead, I'm going to move away from the game and just onto a couple of different bits. First of all, just something of which is NFL specific rather than Brown specific. We have finally seen the first flex of the year when it comes to the TV calendar. The Chiefs and the Patriots have been moved off of Monday Night Football. We knew that something was going to happen like this at some point a while, but mad to think that something that was an AFC Championship game just a handful of years ago has been flexed off of Monday Night Football. It shows. First of all, is this both teams looking relatively unwatchable at the moment, or is this just an indictment on Bill Belichick at this point? And do we expect him to leave at the end of the year? I've completely thrown you under the bus here with something complete that you weren't expecting.
No, I think it's probably an indictment on the Patriots more than the Chiefs. I think, with the standard of games that have been on a Thursday night so far, you would leave the Chiefs on there all day long if it was them against anyone else, maybe Texans, Commanders, literally anyone. I think you'd leave the Chiefs on there. I think because it's the Patriots and they look horrific.
Yeah.
You probably have to make a decision there because there's a potential for a big blowout. And
I find that Eagles Seahawks isn't that much better.
No, I don't know.
Is that just me?
Yeah, just you, I think.
Fair enough. Well, I don't find the Seahawks. I actually know. I guess last night was a. I haven't actually watched last night yet, and apparently that was a humdinger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. To answer the second question, do I expect Bill Belichick to go at the end of the season? Yes. I just don't think I don't see how it can carry on the way it's going. I don't think you'll want to get, into the business of getting a new QB through however method he wants to do it. I think the Patriots are a mess. I don't know if either of you saw Jabril Peppers speaking to the media today. He'd been picked up by someone's microphone on the field saying the Patriots were ass. So he had to come out and basically apologize and basically say as well that like they've got a lot more things to worry about than him saying that. So wouldn't have seen Patriots teams of old calling themselves shit on mic and
Yeah.
getting away with it under Belichick. So something's got to give there, I think.
Yeah, definitely a completely different situation. So I was just looking at the Week 15 games to see as to what I would have flexed. I see Bills Cowboys there, sitting very nice. I thought that would have been a nice one to put into that. But I digress. I'll eat the L there. The Seahawks looked quite good last night from what I could see there. One little bit of barking mad, shall we call it, before heading out. Obviously, 1st of December, Advent starting, people thinking about Christmas. I know I am in my household. The Browns could do with a lot of Christmas wishes right now. If you had one Christmas wish that you could ask for on behalf of the Browns for the rest of this season, what would it be?
Sure.
Can we have some rules on this? There's like
I feel like there are no rules
any
apart
rule.
from maybe you can't do it to the detriment of somebody personally. Like you can't wish injury on
You can't
someone.
nobble someone, but you can bring
Yeah.
someone back from a nobbling.
Within reason. So, for example, if it's an obvious season-ending injury that just cannot be
Right, okay.
rematerialized, like Nick Chubb can't just rise from the ashes, for example.
Mm.
You'd have had to have done it the Aaron Rodgers route and asked for that
There's
ages ago.
something massively not right there, by the way.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah.
I touched
For
on it
anyone,
last week.
yeah, for anyone that hasn't been keeping up with that story, by the way, Aaron Rodgers is training again. The Jets put in the 21-day training rule into place on Tuesday, I think it was, of which means that he has 3 weeks that he can train at the facility before they have to release him off of IR, of which basically means that Rodgers is in line to play, if he wishes, against the Cleveland Browns. Of course.
Have they ever released the like MRI images of his Achilles tear? Yeah.
I feel like they don't want to do that until they see this being a massive success, and then they might just buy someone else's MRI images.
Yeah,
I think they've released the X-rays of what the actual what they did after the surgery. I think they've released that. I don't think they released anything prior. I don't think that's
suspicious.
Americans would probably say it's against that. I can't remember what rights it was. It was a big thing over COVID when like you can't talk about my personal health. That's against such and such data rule.
He didn't have a problem with it during COVID, so why would he have a problem with it now?
Because it doesn't fit the narrative, does it, Owen? Doesn't sell the miracle surgery. He stapled his Achilles back together for one. This is all a bit odd.
My wish would be for DTR to come back and have, ascend the way we've sort of seen so far.
You want the DTR Cinderella story to somehow claw its way back in. That's the wish I thought you were going to ask for.
Yeah,
yes, I like that one. That was very on brand for you. Sean, you've had a bit of time. I mean, this is a 5-minute letter to Santa here, so you've had no time at all. But if you've got a letter to Santa, let's hear it.
Well, I'm just going to keep it simple because I think we've talked enough about injuries and this, that, and the other. We all love a few of the players back. I'm going to wish that the Cleveland Browns no longer appear on Fox TV coverage and no longer have Kevin Kugler and Mark Sanchez on the call, which I'm afraid to say is exactly what we have this weekend.
Oh, no, not the same crew.
Exactly the same. I think I am going to put it on mute and just watch it with my own commentary. I think I'd rather put pins in my eyes.
You don't want to hear them say every time they pass the ball that they should have run the ball, and then every time they run the ball, they should have passed it to Amari Cooper. You don't
That's
have
it.
any interest in that, no?
20-yard completion to Amari Cooper. You'd love to see the Browns run the ball more. No, I wouldn't, Mark. No, I wouldn't at all. Not at all, Mark. I'd love to watch them do the same thing over and over again. Just
And also Mark
absolutely
Sanchez
infuriating.
And also, Mark Sanchez debate a wall as to whether or not a very obvious holding call should have been given or not. Yeah, had a few of those last week.
And you know what, mate? All joking aside, this could very easily go into a different place, and I don't want it to go too deep into that place. But all I will say is, it's amazing the difference the commentary team makes to the game and people's perception of the game.
Yes.
Because I don't know whether you guys probably read plenty of stuff because you're the same as me. You invest in the content and everything. Terry Pluto wrote a column after the game. He's obviously quite prominent in terms of being one of the Cleveland media, and he was all around running the ball. And I just sit there and I think to myself, I'm a big fan of running the football. The three of us have argued and butted heads on how often we should or shouldn't run the ball. I'm sorry. You look at the stats for the year. The Browns have run it more than anybody. Why on earth do we still want to run it more? We've run it more than anybody. Anybody in the league.
Run it some more.
Just
Also,
run it some more.
this betrays some drunken conversations that we've had in person, Sean. When after about 4 times running it in a row, and we get 10 yards, you going there. You go, 3 yards a carry every time.
Every time, win every game.
Just run it until the knees are in the ground. I think that's verbatim.
I'm becoming more nuanced with my views, mate. I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is.
Sobriety. To be fair, I think you were about 5 or 6 Camden L's deep at that point, so we'll let you off.
Yeah, but now, all joking aside, it is amazing, and I think this is the first season. Correct me if I'm wrong, boys, but it's been quite emotional because I don't think we're going to get Kevin Harlan on the call once this year. I don't think it's happened yet.
No, I can't remember it either.
No, but also good. I actually find his commentary a little grating for some reason.
Oh, no way!
I quite like him, I'll be honest.
Look! I'm a Sparrow Dadis fan.
Oh dear.
Sparrow on every call. I miss Sparrow.
I was always quite shocked when I hear Kevin Harlan because I used to play the NBA franchise, and now obviously he's the commentator on the NBA. And then when I first heard him doing the NFL, I was like, "What? People in America commentate on 2 different sports?"
Oh, it's more like 20.
Yeah, that blew my mind because I couldn't imagine like a rugby commentator commenting on football over here, could you? So
yeah, 2024 Olympics. Watch the American coverage. Like, it's going to be great.
I think Tarico's all over that, isn't he? Isn't that Tarico?
Yeah, and there's quite a few of the NFL crews that end up doing it, and they do it on all sorts. You'll have them commentating on the Taekwondo and stuff like that. It's crazy, but it's a lot of fun.
Maybe Mark Sanchez finds his niche by commentating on Taekwondo. Maybe that's where that needs to go.
Yeah, Mark Sanchez ends up going down a rabbit hole of judo, table tennis, and women's doubles badminton. Doesn't get the whole sport, just gets that individual bit. Oh, I could talk about commentators for a whole other hour. I'm not going to, but no, I like that wish, Sean. I wish we were on CBS forever. So that's definitely one of which I enjoy there. Mine is actually a little simpler in that I just hope that at the end of the season, at this point, I hope that we get into the playoffs. But if we don't, then I feel like it's sparing us from what would be a beatdown. Like if we get in, then we deserve to be there at this point. But if not, then I feel like injuries will have grinded us down. So I'm not too fussed about that side of it. But I just hope that at the end of the season, when all's said and done, Myles Garrett finally gets his Defensive Player of the Year. That is probably what I am hoping for more than anything at the moment. Just because I feel like this is the year where he really deserves it. I know there's a couple of others that are in and around it. I just don't see anyone that's having as much of an impact, both in terms of numbers and also the intangibles as well. He always seems pipped to it because of injury or someone having an insane run of games or,
Car crash.
a car crash or throwing a helmet at somebody. There's usually always something. Yeah. I didn't really think about the cut. He wasn't anywhere near it for that one. That was a mulligan year. But yeah, that's the one for me, I think. But
So a quick update for Sean, because me and Sean are noted degenerate gamblers on this podcast. So Sean, my Sky Bet request bet came back today, and
Ooh.
it's 100-1 for Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year, and Kevin Stefanski, Coach of the Year double.
Was that defensive player and not MVP?
Yeah, it was. I thought I'd put MVP down, but I looked back and it was Depoy. So
Right.
100-1,
Right. Everyone on the listening on the podcast, you didn't hear that because they'll end up shutting it down if people put too much on that. So we'll do that on everyone's behalf and just slow that up. Because 100-1 for that's great. I honestly think if the Browns make the playoffs, I think that Stefanski's a shoo-in for coach. And I think Garrett's number one currently for DPOY. So I like that. I like that a lot. That's worth a lot of money, of which I shouldn't be putting on. It's Christmas after all. But that would make a lot of pocket money for 2024. No, right. You know what? I'm getting off book. Right. With that, we'll close out the show for this week. Thanks both to Sean and Owain for that. We won't be doing a direct after game pod because the game will finish at about midnight. And as much as I enjoy talking about the Browns at no matter what time, my other half will probably beat me with whatever she has on her at the time. So we will be back either Monday or Tuesday. Remember, it's a 9:25 kickoff. It's not on Sky, is it, gents? I don't think it is. No. So on your DAZN Game Pass or wherever it is that you can find Fox, if you're listening to us from the States. I got the Spotify rap stats back. Thank you to everyone that's listening, not just in the UK, but in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Taiwan. There's someone listening to us in Taiwan. Thank you so much for that. And everywhere else of which Spotify doesn't tell me about because you're listening to us on Twitter or Facebook or something like that. Thank you so much. Honestly, it's really humbling to see stuff like that. So thank you for that. We'll be back next week. Let's hope that the Browns get a win with Joe Flacco. God, I can't believe I'm rooting for Joe Flacco in a game of football. I'll get over my existential crisis. We'll see you next week. You've been listening to the Believe in Brits podcast.